Hello, everyone. Welcome to Sports and Spice. I'm your host, Charlie Walker. As you can tell, we have upgraded this podcast with these microphones and headsets we have here. I have my two regular guests I will be having on regularly, my dad and my brother. Guys, do you want to introduce yourselves? Either of you can go first, doesn't matter what
We
one.
can go with oldest and wisest first.
Hey, what up? This is just Tom. My claim to fame are these other two guys, Jesse and Charlie. I'm their dad, and it's the greatest thing in the world to be their dad. I'm super proud of them. Pretty cool. Charlie's like doing this major upgrade with us in pictures. Probably don't always like to see your face. Well, maybe I don't always like to see my face, but nonetheless, Chuck Daddy's on fire, and so I'm in. Whatever he wants, I'm in. So, proud of both these guys, Jesse and Charlie.
Yep, I'm Jesse. I've been on an episode before, the old way. Shout out to Charlie, my dad's right, on this new setup. These are Christmas and birthday gifts for him, getting these microphones and headphones and kind of these things situated. And he's been nice enough to share with me and my dad. So here we are recording. And what else? Big basketball fan, big movie fan. My wife's in grad school at the University of Utah, so that's where we live. Go Cougs. But yeah, things are good. Excited to be a Sports and Spice regular.
Thank you, Dad and Jesse, for helping me throughout this process. It's going to be fun, and I'm excited to get things going. I brought these two on because us three talk about sports all the time, so might as well just let everyone else hear what we talk about because I think it can be pretty interesting sometimes. So I have a question for Dad and Jesse so that people can understand that they actually know what they're talking about. Just a fun question to ask to start. What team in your mind in the NBA is in the most trouble after seeing their playoff performances? And I'll have Jesse start with this one.
Yeah, awesome. So I thought about a couple different teams. I thought about the Cavs and the Hawks and, maybe even Memphis and some other things. But I think you'd have to say Minnesota, the Timberwolves. And maybe not necessarily with their playoff performance. I mean, they almost beat the Lakers in the playoff game. They ended up losing, and then they ultimately lost 4-1 to the Nuggets, who are most likely going to win it all. So that in itself isn't terrible. But what's terrible if you're Minnesota is that you went all in last year, as all of us from Utah, all us Jazz fans know and are very grateful for, right? Minnesota went 110% in on winning now and on Rudy Gobert. And I'm not really sure where they go from here. It appeared, at least one season in, that was not a team that is ever going to seriously compete for a championship. And I don't know what they do. I don't think they can trade Rudy Gobert. I mean, I think his value has plummeted from what they got him for. I don't think you trade Anthony Edwards, right, because he's kind of their future. So, I mean, that leaves a lot of questions. Do you trade Karl Anthony Towns? Do you just sit on it and be okay with being a competitive team that makes the playoffs and loses in the first round? I don't know, but I don't see an avenue for them to get significantly better than they were this year.
And you're 100% correct that everyone was expecting the Timberwolves to at least make kind of a run in the playoffs, but that was not the case. Dad, I'm excited to hear what you say as well.
Okay, so I can't say Minnesota, although I appreciate your comments, Jesse, because my brother Brian lives there. And so I have to kind of act, at least when I'm talking to him, and Brian's the best, that they're okay. You know what I mean? So in my mind, whether they're a playoff team or not, it's maybe a little sketch. but I'm going with Toronto Raptors. And because, who's the coach? You know what I'm saying? They have not hired a coach. Like Nick Nurse, he's like a coach of another team. He can't coach both teams.
Do you think that's
Who's their coach? What's going on with Fred VanVleet? What's going on with Siakam? What's going on with Adedabube or whatever? I can't really say his last name, but we all know who you. Huh?
OG?
Oh, OG Anunoby. I can't say his last name that well.
Yeah,
either.
that guy. I mean, are they coming back? Are they not coming back? Just feels like it's a real chaos Toronto right now. And so, I don't know. I mean, they got talent, but I don't know that any of them are going to stay. I think they're all out. I don't know. Seems chaos, Toronto, for me.
Yeah, it's for sure chaos. I think the craziest team that's going to have a crazy offseason is for sure Toronto. Like, either they're going to keep their players or either they're going to do basically what the Jazz did this season. I feel like they're in a very similar situation as kind of how we were in last year. They maybe hit their peak. Well, they won the finals, but they had Kawhi Leonard, and that was ever since that they haven't really been the same team. I think it'd be interesting to hear what happens with Siakam and Fred VanVleet.
100 times out of 100, Toronto would do the same thing. Even if it's led to some confusion and a potential rebuild here coming. 100 times out of 100, you can win one championship. It's worth it.
Do you think... Okay, this is probably pushing a little bit, but Kawhi Leonard basically won them a championship. Do you think he could actually have like a statue outside of their stadium or something like that?
I think if he has a statue, it's got to be of a basketball hoop and a ball that bounces around 25 times
I mean, yeah.
before it goes in. I think that's the statue.
It's hard because he played one single season there. But I'm just trying to think, as again, we're all Jazz fans, we're all from Utah. If a player played one season in Utah but brought us a championship and won Finals MVP, we probably would build a statue.
Oh, 100%. And I think Toronto's kind of similar in that way, maybe. Like, once he retires, I wouldn't be surprised if he gets something there.
Good point.
All right. Time to move on to the NBA Finals. The series was tied 1-1 until yesterday. The Nuggets had not one person with a triple-double, but two players with a triple-double. And Jamal Murray and Jokic just dominated that game. Dad, what did you see in that game that surprised you the most?
So, I think we're going to talk about this here in a little bit later, but to me, and I mean, I'm just calling the way I see it, Denver is way more talented than Miami. And I think yesterday the talent won. Every once in a while in these playoffs, Miami plays like an 8 seed. Which they are. And so every once in a while they just kind of they're not competitive, and they lose big. It doesn't affect them long term because they won all these series, but to me Denver's more talented, and I think that came out pretty strong last night. And Jokic, so Charlie and I were watching the game last night, and I'm telling you, within like say a 5 or 7 foot half circle around the basket, and those shots are hard, way hard. He and these Jesse and Charlie can tell you how hard they are, but he has this floater that is so unique, and does it not feel automatic? Like, okay, he's shooting that weird shot and it's 2 points every time. I mean, obviously he misses once in a while, but it feels like he shoots 95% when he's in that 5-foot radius. He's amazing.
Well, when we were watching that game, it would be funny because he would just do that little hook shot like my dad's talking about, and it will go all over the rim, but you know it's going in. And when he misses it, it's almost a surprise at this point, I feel like. Jesse, what do you think?
About Game 3?
Yes.
I mean, yeah, I don't know. I mean, we can kind of maybe get into the next question too, just because there's a lot of overlap. But Charlie's next question that he was going to ask is kind of about the different keys for both teams here. The keys for Miami and the keys for Denver, and kind of repeating and highlighting what Tom said, my dad, is just that Denver has so much more room for error. And it's interesting, you know, as I was looking at kind of the things we were going to talk about on this podcast today, it was before Game 3. And I was looking at this question, the keys for both teams, and my initial reactions were a lot different than after that Game 3, right? My thoughts. But yeah, Denver has so much more room for error. They're so much more talented. And, you know, it's interesting. Miami has been probably the least talented team in every series they've played. And I don't mean that as a burn on Miami. But, yeah, Denver's something special. So, I mean, I guess a key for Miami to try and beat Denver would be to limit everyone outside of Jokic, right? And in that Game 2, that's kind of mainly what they were able to do. Is I think everyone's realized this season, like, okay, you know, you put Anthony Davis on him, you put Bam on him. These are both stellar defensive centers, and there's just nothing you can do right now. He's just, you know, he's at his apex power right now, and he's going to score. So you almost have to surrender that. So I think it's stopping other people. And last night, they could not stop Jamal Murray. So there's no way in the world you're going to win a game when you have two guys going for 30-point triple-doubles, right? So Jokic is going to do that. But you can't let Jamal Murray do that. And then key for Denver, I think if you look at Game 1 and Game 3, is they were the aggressor. And they were assertive. And like we just kind of highlighted with Miami, how they were the lesser talented team in all their series they've played, the reason they've been able to win is because they've largely been the aggressor, right? And they've been the hustler, and they've been doing all the dirty work. And, you know, those kind of things can make up for a talent disparity sometimes, right? When you're just flat out playing harder. And in Game 2, I think that's what happened, is Miami played harder. So Denver can't just rely on their talent. They have to at least be equal or slightly below, at minimum, Miami's aggressive level. And if they do that, then, I mean, the series is probably over in 5 games. If they, you know, think, oh, yeah, we're cool, we're ahead now, then Miami will sneak up on them again. But, yeah, I think it's obvious. It was obvious last night that Denver's talent is just overwhelming for Miami. And it's not a burn for Miami. I mean, Miami's been awesome, and all these guys are in the NBA, and they're super talented. But, I mean, talking about talent, I don't know if there's a player who does less with more talent than Michael Porter Jr. He hasn't even appeared really in the series at all, and Denver's still up 2-1. So if he gets going, along with Murray and Jokic, then, I mean, it feels like Denver still has room to improve, where Miami's maybe maxed out.
Yeah, it's interesting you brought that thing up about Porter Jr. because I saw something on Twitter actually today, and it said like the Nuggets were averaging like around like 15 threes against the Lakers, and they're only averaging 8 threes against the Heat. So clearly they've lost their touch a little bit from the three. But I agree with both of you. I totally think Denver is the most talented team left. And I agree with what Jesse said. The Heat never really in their series have been the more talented team. They just are the more aggressive. And the interesting thing about the game last night was a rookie came in, and when the game was close, really he was the aggressor. And I feel like he helped the Nuggets feel like they needed to be aggressive. Christian Braun is his name, or Christian Brown. I don't think anyone really knows how to pronounce his last name. They're even saying that on TV. But he was all over the floor, and you could just tell, man, he was so aggressive. And I think the Nuggets were like, well, if this rookie can be aggressive, we might as well step up as well. So I agree with Jesse. I think the Heat are going to have to be way more aggressive in Game 4, and that is their only chance in winning the game. Another thing that I found interesting, while Dad and I were watching, the Heat have been really good in the playoffs against playing the zone with their defense. But it looked like what the Nuggets were doing was Jokic was just posting up any small guy he could, like Gabe Vincent or Kyle Lowry. And if it opens up, if he's able to do that, he can just take that person down as far as he can, and people are going to be like, well, we can't let Jokic score because he's going to score that automatic basket like we've been talking about.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of unfortunate for Miami that their biggest strength this postseason has been that zone, which is, it's an awesome defense, but the best way to beat a zone is with a really good big man, and Denver has the best big man.
Oh, 100%. And so is Jokic right now the best player in the world, even if he doesn't win this title, or does he need to win the title? I'm going to start with Dad on this one.
Yeah, I got to be honest. You know what? Even if he doesn't, he's the best. I mean, he can do so. He's scoring like 30 points a game in these playoffs, and is averaging like, I don't know, 15 or 16 rebounds a game in these playoffs, and he wants to pass.
Yeah.
Like, his first thought is to pass it to someone for an assist. It's kind of like when LeBron was just so dominant. LeBron scored all these points, but he's looking to get his teammates involved. He's looking to have a team versus just dominating the game himself. And yeah, I don't think it matters. It will help if he wins a championship, but come on. I mean, the last 3 years, and now we're seeing it in the playoffs too. It's pretty amazing. I do think he has to win one eventually, but I don't know that it has to be this year for him to be the best.
Jesse, what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I think at this point, win or lose, he probably gets that title, best player in the world or whatever. The only thing that would maybe make it interesting is if somehow Miami comes back and Jimmy Butler averages like 45 points a game over the next little bit, which, not impossible. He did it against Milwaukee, but probably unlikely. I do think, though, one thing I wanted to say on this is I do think that the title of world's best player is going to be a lot more fluid over the next couple of years than it's been over the last 15 years of LeBron's reign. And I know there's been, some people saying Kevin Durant, some people saying Steph Curry, but largely people agree that it's been LeBron for a long time. Like even when, he lost in the finals against the Warriors some of those times, I think a lot of people would still say, yeah, LeBron's the best player.
That's a good point.
But Jokic has earned that title, and rightfully so. Dude's killing it. But if Giannis had made it further in the playoffs, would we still say, oh, what about Giannis? Or if Embiid can ever get over the hump with, Nick Nurse now, what about him? Or, it wouldn't be entirely surprising to me if the Lakers can figure out something, and maybe they can't, but if they do and LeBron gets healthy, I mean, he's honestly not that far off these guys either. So Jokic for sure has got the title, but of the world's best player. But in 6 months, 8 months, a year, it could be somebody else. And a year after that, it could be somebody else. I think it's going to be a lot more fluid over the next handful of years than it's been.
Yeah, I think a couple of people are for sure fighting for that title. Like you guys have been saying, like Jokic, Giannis, Embiid. Some people even say Tatum. I'm not sure I agree with on that one, but
I mean, Luka's still lurking. I know Dallas collapsed, but
people are just
good players, a lot of good talent.
There are some really good players. I just think I like what Dad said. I feel like when you watch Jokic, he passes up on a couple of open threes. Like he's not really like a score first person, like Dad said. He's kind of a pass first, and he in that way he kind of reminds me of like LeBron. I feel like they kind of both just know exactly where everyone is. And it's just amazing to watch, especially because Jokic doesn't appear to be as the most athletic person. Clearly he's athletic, but he doesn't appear that way. And just when you're watching him, it's incredible, and it's awesome.
I agree. Just one quick comment to add in, though. I think LeBron and Jokic are so different about how they go about it. Like, LeBron was unreal. In my opinion, he's the GOAT, and Jokic is playing so good right now. And, they are, I would say, the two, maybe Chris Paul you have to throw in the conversation, but top passers currently playing the game. But LeBron at his apex, and arguably still, I know the foot kind of bothered him this year, but, like, how he did it is when he's at his best, he controls the game. He controls the pace. He asserts his will. He says, this is how I want to play. And he makes it happen. Jokic is able to just do it in the natural flow of the game. So it feels different to me, where LeBron is like, this is what I want to have happen. Jokic, like, it just feels like, oh yeah, we're just watching a normal basketball game. Jokic is just out there, like, they're all just playing, and then Jokic has 30, 20, and 10. Like, it just happens for him.
It's like,
so they accomplish kind of the same thing, but in very different ways.
It is very interesting. You'll be watching a game, and it's like halfway through the third quarter, and you look at like your phone to see what, like, the stats. You see Jokic has a triple double, and you're like, man, this is insane. Like, the way he's playing right now, I have not seen. Like, LeBron like did it, but like Jokic can do it just so easily. He gets triple doubles like every game he plays now. It's just crazy.
Let me add one thing to Charlie about Jokic.
Jokic, I think.
Either way, he has the softest touch as a huge man. The guy is 7 feet tall, and what do you think? 280. He shoots it, and I've never seen someone who's as big as that with that kind of touch. He shoots it, and it's so soft that even when he misses it a little bit, it bounces on the rim, and there's a good chance it's going in. All these other guys, if they miss a little bit, their touch isn't as soft, and so it hits the rim and bounces off. And I find it really fascinating that his touch is so soft that a lot of times it goes in when it really probably shouldn't. It, like, he misses it, but does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's unreal. Not bad for a guy who was drafted during a Taco Bell commercial.
All right, so we kind of talked about the Nuggets. Now it's time to talk a little bit about the Heat and their crazy run they've made this playoffs. The Heat culture is a real thing after this year, I feel like. Like, yeah, it's been real, but I feel like this year Spoelstra has something going on with the Heat, with those undrafted players and their physicality. And Spoelstra is the best coach clearly in the NBA right now. So my question to you guys is like, Spoelstra, if Spoelstra wins, basically I feel like he told like what his players to do to like win the finals, but I feel like basically it's like a coach finals. Does that make sense? Like, he is a big reason that if they do win the whole thing, I just feel like he's outcoached everyone. Like the series isn't over clearly, but he's outcoached everyone to this point. Like it's not even close because his team clearly is not as talented. They are just playing with way more physicality, and that's probably because of him.
So I'll talk about this for a minute. It is totally real. And I would have never guessed it was real until these playoffs started.
Yeah.
Because they should, talent-wise, they should not have beaten Milwaukee. I don't think they should have beaten the Knicks. For sure they should not have beaten Boston. And in Game 2, they won. They were down big to start the fourth quarter, came back and won. And so the Heat culture is absolutely real in my mind. And I think it goes from Spoelstra to Riley. I think they all know exactly what they're supposed to do. They all have assignments. They know their assignments. They're good at their assignments. And Spoelstra is able to put confidence in his players that is unreal. For example, Duncan Robinson, who we watched in the finals in 2020 against the Lakers, all he could do is shoot jumpers. And couldn't dribble. Now he's dribbling and getting past players for layups and dunks. It is amazing. One more thing. So, first 3 quarters of the 3 games so far. Okay, I looked this up. I did some math. Denver has outscored Miami by 43 points in those 3 games. That's quite a lot.
In the first 3 quarters.
First 3 quarters. The fourth quarter of the 3 games, Miami has outscored Denver by 20 points. Last night, Denver outscored Miami by 1 point. The point I'm making is if the game is close, and if Miami has a chance, I'm talking 10 points or less in the fourth quarter, I think realistically they'll win. And it's I don't know if they're in better shape. You wouldn't think at this point that would matter. But something happens in the fourth quarter with the Heat. And if they got a chance, at this point you got to like their chances. I think the culture is totally real. And it's amazing.
Yeah, I would say Heat culture's been real for a while now. I'm glad you two are catching on to it this year. But, I mean, if you think about it, since 2011, Miami has been to 6 finals. So 6 finals in 12 years. That's 50% of the finals. And going back 2006, not too much further back, they went to another one. So they know what it takes. I mean, even LeBron, right? He kind of learned the Heat culture and then took it and has made, 5 finals and won 2 championships since leaving Miami. So I think, it's a lot of different things. I think... one last thing about the Heat culture. Did you guys see that stat in the game last night that Pat Riley, as either a player, coach, or an executive, has been to 25% of the finals that have ever been played? It's pretty crazy.
And not to interrupt you, Jesse, but does he look like... And this... Come on. I mean, we're just shooting the breeze here. Like he should be in the Mafia.
Because of the slick back hair.
He's got some slick hair.
And he doesn't smile. It's just so serious. I'm like, watch out for Pat Riley.
There's that story about Pat Riley, right? I think he was recruiting Chris Bosh, I think, back in the summer of 2011, when they got LeBron and Bosh, and he's meeting with Chris Bosh, and all he doesn't say anything. He just has like a little baggie, and he drops it on the table. And Chris Bosh opens it up, and it's all his different championship rings. It's like, I don't even need to say anything. That's kind of Pat Riley. But
for sure.
Anyways, so Pat Riley, obviously, I think kind of instilled Heat culture, whatever you want to call it, but I think Eric Spoelstra's kind of taken it and ran with it. I do think that they are in better shape than other teams. I do think that they know their roles better than other teams. I think, they do have that confidence. They do try hard. I mean, I'm trying to think if there's ever been a time recently that I can remember watching a Miami game and feeling like, oh, they weren't prepared to play tonight, or oh, they aren't trying tonight.
Good
and
point.
I mean, last night, right, like we've talked about, Denver kind of just overpowered them, but it was a close game for a lot of the first half, and they were still trying, even down to the fourth quarter. They were trying to make a run, they just couldn't get over the hump. I don't know if there's ever been a time where I'm like, oh, Miami just doesn't want to win tonight, they don't want to play. And I think most other NBA teams have nights like that, right? Miami will never beat themselves, and it's pretty impressive. It's pretty impressive that you can take, Jimmy Butler hasn't made an all-star team in a couple of years, which is surprising because he's their best player. Bam has, but Bam is their only all-star this year. They've got a bunch of guys who are undrafted who rightfully have earned NBA spots and, are good NBA players, but they've made a pretty impressive run to the finals. So yeah, Heat culture for sure is real. Eric Spoelstra, in terms of not only like the confidence he instills and things, but he's also a really smart coach who takes interesting risks that pay off, like the zone defense, like we've talked about. That's been really key. I don't think a lot of other coaches try zones anymore, or especially would try a zone where they put their all defensive team center out at the top of it, which sometimes they do. So he's really creative in the things he comes up with, and he for sure has been a reason they've been able to overcome the talent disparity they have against the other teams. Like, I don't know if Miami beats Milwaukee with... Oh, there's no way. Does Milwaukee beat Miami? Does Miami beat Milwaukee if those two coaches were flipped? So,
No way.
Budenhauser's coaching Miami and Spo's coaching Milwaukee. Right?
Not a chance.
Not even
it's pretty
close.
crazy, too, that... pretty universally accepted. A lot of people say Greg Popovich is the greatest basketball coach of all time. And he's still currently coaching, but everyone's saying Spoelstra's now the best. Like, while Popovich, who is considered the GOAT coach, is still in his career, you've got a guy who is now better than him. You know what I mean? It's pretty nuts.
I wish Spoelstra might... again, I'm just saying how I see it. Does he not kind of look like a Mafia Junior? Like, he needs to smile once in a while.
He does.
Hey, do you know Spoelstra's story? Spoelstra is awesome.
He is awesome, but he gives a look sometimes like scary.
Hey.
And I think it's just that he's intense.
Okay, well,
but he's pretty, yeah.
If Spoelstra and Riley look like Mafia, what did Quinn Snyder look like? Like a mad scientist?
Yeah, what's
crazy
Quinn
man?
Snyder?
He did kind of look a little...
In his black shirt he'd always wear.
He did kind of look a little cray-cray, let's be honest. Sometimes when the hair was just, he was flying up like...
Hey,
I was like,
one last thing
boy.
real quick on Eric Spoelstra. So, Monty Williams, right? Really solid coach. Really good coach. Just signed a new contract with the Detroit Pistons for an average of just over $13 million a year. What do we think Eric Spoelstra is worth? If Monty Williams is getting that, what is Eric Spoelstra really worth?
Well, I know Monty Williams now is the highest paid coach, correct?
Yeah, he is now. He just signed a new contract.
So
right?
Spoelstra
so that's going to set a precedence, just like all these things do. I don't
Spoelstra's
know
worth
Spoelstra's
way
new
more than
contract
that.
Is, but you saying
We should
20
look up...
million?
Do you know,
25?
Jesse, how much he's making?
I'll look it up right now. Let's see.
While Jesse's looking that up, I just want to say like how cool it is. Like the Heat really have that Heat culture, like we've been talking about. Like next man up is real. Like this whole playoffs, they haven't had one of their best scorers, Tyler Hero, and they're in the NBA Finals. Like
that's
Caleb,
maybe worth a whole conversation.
Caleb Martin has stepped up. Duncan Robinson all of a sudden is a good player again. Like in the regular season, he did not look like he was that great, but now he's playing really good. And it's just crazy how many players that they have undrafted, and I know the Heat players don't like to be called the undrafted players that are like amazing now because of the Heat culture. But as fans, it's just insane to us because it's not often that you have like that many undrafted players contribute so well for a team. And Spoelstra is able to give them that confidence, like Dad said, for them to actually do that. Jesse, do you have the...
Yeah, sorry, my internet's still loading.
No worries.
I think it's 'cause that's-
While Jesse's looking for that, I'm just going to ask you guys, like I think it's obvious, we kind of all said, who do you guys think is going to win the championship? I got Denver, I'll be honest.
I have Denver for sure too, but I'm telling you, if the Heat can keep it close, and I'm telling you, within 10 points in that fourth quarter, they got a chance.
Yeah.
And if it was the reverse, if Denver was down by 10 points, no way.
Yeah.
If you watch the end of that game too, Denver has been flowing this whole playoff series. No adversity. And they faced a little bit of adversity with the Heat, and it kind of fell apart. And their athleticism and talent became kind of a mess a little bit. And Miami, that's all they do, is they win close games and they figure it out. So if the game's close, I think Denver will win, but watch out. I think Denver needs to watch out.
One thing I've noticed watching the 3 games so far is, like what you're saying, Denver is like so flowing for those 3 quarters, and then for some reason their offense just kind of stops. Like the Heat, I don't know what the Heat are doing differently, but I don't know if they're playing more aggressive, but like I feel like their offense kind of just like stops. It doesn't flow as well, and the Heat just are getting points off that.
Yeah,
like,
I
they
mean,
keep missing.
Also,
No, I'm done.
like I said earlier, right? Denver can't feel like, oh, we're high and mighty now, because the second these teams do that, Miami wins, right? You don't wanna give Miami
doing
an
that
inch
to
of
this team.
belief. You don't want to give Miami an inch of belief, but yeah, I'd be very surprised if Miami can win the series. It'd be cool. Personally, I'm pulling for Miami, but it doesn't seem likely. Okay, going back real quick to the contract of Eric Spoelstra, I'm having a hard time finding like an official thing. The best I can do right now is, I found a website. I don't know how legit it is, but maybe you guys take a guess, okay? How much do you think he made this year?
How much was Monty Williams making?
Monty Williams, $13 million a year.
I'm saying $4.5 million a year.
Charlie?
Yeah, like 5.
3.
Oh my goodness.
And isn't it the Miami way that you can't really find out how much he's making on the
Probably.
website? I mean, it's exactly the
Did you know Eric
culture.
Spoelstra has never won Coach of the Year before? That blew my mind when I heard that.
Well, I feel like where he gets going is always the playoffs. Like his regular season teams are pretty good,
Weren't they
but I
the
guess
one
with like
seed last
LeBron,
year?
and
Were
What?
they? They might have been.
they were the 1 seed. They should have. Who won the Coach of the Year last year? It should have been
He
Spoelstra.
did win the Coach of the Year last year.
Yeah.
I should know that. Oh, was it?
Who
I don't know.
who was the 1 seed in the
It
West?
was
last
Monty Williams last
You're
year.
right. It was Monty
Yeah,
Williams.
it was Monty. Monty's been fired since then.
Clearly, it's important to be good in the playoffs if you're a coach. We've seen that this year.
Well, I think too.
For
sorry,
sure.
real quick, last thing on Spoelstra, as we're talking about, is you got to be willing to try to make adjustments. And like Steve Kerr is a freaking doctor at making adjustments in the playoffs. Boldenhauser, whatever. That's what everyone says was the main reason he got fired, is he wasn't making adjustments, right?
Right.
Monty
And-
Williams, I don't know how many adjustments could have been made with that Suns team. The way they were, but suppose give
And
it.
I feel like that's a big reason that the Jazz were done with Snyder as well. That's not a shot at him at all. I'm just saying
Okay, Char.
maybe it was because Gobert was on the team and it's kind of hard to make your adjustments with Gobert.
Real quick, and then we can move on. Would you rather have Kawhi Leonard for a season, right, like the Raptors did, or Spoelstra for a season with the Jazz?
I feel like Will Hardy kind of has this, like, we've only seen a year of it, but they kind of have that similar culture of next man up, at least that year. So I wouldn't mind having Kawhi Leonard with Will Hardy.
I'm going Kawhi baby all the way.
What about you, Jesse?
Probably Kawhi, but I mean, it's a testament to Spoelstra that.
Could you imagine if we had Kawhi and Laurie together on the basketball court?
Let's
Holy
go.
cow.
Let's go.
It's not happening. Like, this is just fun to talk about, but that'd be crazy. All right, let's move on. Let's talk about the NBA draft and let's focus on the Jazz. So clearly, we know that there's a couple tiers in the draft, right? You got Victor Wembanyama, Scoot Henderson, Brandon Miller. Then it kind of falls a little bit, but Amen Thompson's kind of like close to that tier, but not really. And really, once it gets to 5, that's when things get crazy. The pick that Detroit has. So, what will happen? The question is basically whatever the Pistons do will determine the draft. And a lot of people think they're going to choose Cam Whitmore from Villanova. But if they don't, then the draft is going to completely change because Cam Whitmore is a very talented player that everyone wants. And if he falls, then let's say Detroit chooses Jarvis Walker. I don't know if I'm saying his name correctly, but then like it literally is determined by them because the first 4 I feel like are pretty clear who it's going to be. It doesn't matter what order. It's going to be Victor Wembanyama, probably Brandon Miller, Scoot Henderson, and Amen Thompson. And then when it hits 5, that's when the draft really starts. At least as a Jazz fan, I feel like, or basically for everyone. So, right now we're going to talk about some players that we've all studied that the Jazz can take at 9. Clearly, there's those 2 power forwards I mentioned. Well, I mentioned Jarvis Walker. There's also a guy named Taylor Hendricks. He played at UCF. And then there's the other Thompson twin that's kind of been falling a little more on these mock drafts, Azar Thompson. And then you have those point guards, Cason Wallace, Anthony Black. And then there's players that I don't want to get, and I'm not sure about you guys, but Grady Dick. And then some people now are saying that we might take even Nick Smith Jr. at number 9. And I want to avoid those 2 as much as possible. I was not really impressed with Nick Smith Jr. and Grady Dick. So, Dad, who is your favorite at number 9?
Okay, so yeah. Let me just tell you about Jazz a little bit for me, okay? The Jazz there's some talk, actually quite a bit of talk, about the Jazz moving up. I think you're right, Charlie. You got the first 4, and then there's 5, and really 5 through, I made a list, 5 through 18 could be anybody. The Jazz have worked out Cam Whitmore, who's projected to go 5. He could drop. The only way I trade up is if I get Scoot Henderson, a point guard that the Jazz, I think, would love to have. I'm telling you, he loves basketball. He's fast.
He's in the new LeBron movie.
Which was pretty good. I mean, all three of us have seen it. Jesse saw it today. He's fast. He will work on his shot. And I know, I'm just looking at his potential. I'm telling you, he could be a John Stockton if he works on his shot.
A little more athletic, but yeah.
Yeah, I mean, a bigger version. Okay, so if that happens, I would be sky high because I'm telling you, he could be a generational player. If not, at number 9, I want either Hendricks or Walker, for sure. I'm not doing a point guard at 9. I'm taking one of those two guys, and I may be even taking this French guy, Charlie, the Bilal guy.
Bilal.
I'm taking one of those 3 guys, assuming that Ozzer Thompson is not available.
Yeah.
And I don't think he will be. But I think one of those 3 guys will be available. That's why I'm taking at 9.
What about you, Jesse? What do you think? Jesse, you're muted.
Awkward. You'd think that through the pandemic I would learn to know when to mute and unmute. Sorry. For pick number 9, right? That's where we're still
Yes.
at. I would want Thompson. That's who I'm pulling for. I think he offers the most upside. Important to note with the draft, right? As we've talked about before, and as I've told you guys my opinion before, anyone can be a bust, right? Number 1 pick, Wembanyama could be a bust. And then the number 41st pick, drafted during the Taco Bell commercial, could turn into a 2-time MVP and soon-to-be champion. You never know.
Exactly.
But Asar Thompson, I think, kind of the guys within the 9 range that the Jazz are going to get, has the most potential. So that's probably who I would pull for.
And I 100% agree. You kind of both said it. I feel like Azor Thompson, if he's there, that's the hope as a Jazz fan. You're like, please just take him. He's so athletic. His shooting's maybe not the best, but he can learn. He's got the most potential. And I agree with Dad. If he's gone, hopefully Jarvis Walker and Taylor Hendricks are there. Because in my opinion, I think we could take a point guard at 16. I feel like they're most likely going to be there. But another guy that Dad mentioned that I totally forgot about is this Bilal, can't say his last name, Koulabe, whatever. He's a teammate of Wembanyama in the French league right now. And they're in the championship, and he's contributing a lot in that league. And interesting enough, a person that's been going to a lot of those games is Danny Ainge. And it's not because of Wembanyama, I don't think. So he could get drafted higher and then switch up the draft even. So it really, like we've all said, pick 5 will determine the draft. And I also feel like Orlando's pick can determine the draft, at least if it's for Azor Thompson. Because I don't think the Pacers and Wizards are going to draft Azor Thompson. The Pacers want a power forward, and the Wizards are definitely going to draft a point guard.
Hey, I'm telling you, between 5 and 18, it's amazing. I have in one that I kind of put together that the Lakers could get Bufkin at 17, and the Heat could get Jordan Hawkins at 18. Those are really good players. 5 to 18, I could see the Jazz taking Bufkin at 9. He's really good.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know that there's a big difference between any of those guys.
I have Bufkin and Hawkins. I don't know if we were going to transition to talk about 16.
Yeah.
But I have them more kind of at the 16 range, those two.
Yeah.
Another player, so I feel like if the Jazz, I don't really think they need to get a point guard. They're the first pick. If they do, that's wonderful, and it'll determine the rest of the draft. But I feel like us 3 agree that they could definitely get a pretty dang good point guard at the second pick. And there's 2 that stand out to me the most. It's Bufkin, like Dad said, from Michigan, and Hood Schifino from Indiana. And I would be totally fine with either of those guys. I think Bufkin's maybe was able to show more of his talent just in the system he played in. People are saying that Hood Schifino didn't really get to show a lot of his talent because of the Indiana system. And I honestly think Coach Shafino is a dang good player, and I would be very happy if we took Hood Shafino with that 16th pick.
I think it's curious too. I don't know if anyone really knows what the Jazz are going to do on the draft. I feel like, people are assuming we're going to take a point guard. That's kind of the general consensus. But I'm not sure that's maybe not even going to be the case. I mean, we've technically got Sexton, and we could bring back Horton Tucker. I mean, the Jazz are maybe open enough to just taking whoever they feel is the best player, right? They don't maybe need to feel like stuck to a position. So who knows? Who knows what's going to happen? It's going to be
I think
that's a good point.
Yeah, I think that's really true, Jess. Real quick, Charlie. I think that the Jazz, at the end of the season last year, we realized that Ainge and Zanuck kind of tempered our expectations. And so the thought that we're going to win the championship next year is pretty unrealistic. That these three guys are going to help us win a championship next year is not going to happen.
Yeah.
And we have to be a little realistic with, I know we're all excited about these picks, but I think it's a process.
That's a great point, and I think I told you guys this a couple weeks ago, but I heard, I can't remember if it was on 97.5, I think it was, but from Ben Anderson, but that the Jazz, if the Jazz's next year draft pick, so not this draft, but next draft, falls outside of the top 9, the pick goes to Oklahoma City.
Yeah.
So the Jazz are probably going to do everything they can to make sure that they're in the top 9 because you want that pick, right? So for sure need to temper expectations. Real quick, looping it back into the draft, one name I wanted to throw out. I don't think we said him. If we have, I apologize. But I think maybe a potential under the radar. It could be kind of like a reach, like, oh, are we sure about that? But a lot of people thought that Jason Tatum was a reach, his pick, because everyone thought the Washington guy should have been the pick, and he was the pick, but then Boston traded it, so whatever. But Chris Murray from Iowa, Keegan Murray's twin brother, and anyone who paid attention to the NBA this year, that Keegan Murray was a stud. He was not afraid of the moment. He's big. He can shoot. He probably can. I think he can handle his own on defense. I would take a look at Chris Murray. Maybe not at 9, but for sure at 16.
I agree. I think, I'm not saying it's going to happen, but some people in mock drafts have even following to 28. But I honestly think Chris Murray would be a pretty good player for the Jazz. Like Jesse said, Keegan Murray was incredible at Sacramento this year. They're a little different. I think Keegan Murray's a little better of a shooter, I believe, but they're twins.
Pretty similar, though.
The Thompson twins are very similar as well. The Murray twins are
It's
similar.
kind of like the Morris twins.
Yeah,
I think
exactly.
one of them is better than the other, but are you 100% sure which one that is?
Yeah.
There's
There's
more
two-
From year to year.
I don't know.
And
And
Caleb
they've been playing for 12 years, and I'm still really not quite sure which is which, but I know one's better.
But both are good, right? So
Yeah.
even if Keegan is slightly better than Chris, I think the advantage of Chris is that he's 24, I think, so he's a little older. But I don't think he's going to need a warm-up period.
No.
You know what I mean? I think he can come in and start and contribute.
I agree. I think he would be ready to contribute.
And I'm also of the
Instantly.
opinion, maybe this is the Toronto Raptors way and it's not worked out for them, but I don't think you can get enough big bodies that can run and shoot. If we could have 5 Lauri Markkanens on our team, I'd be like, yeah, that's what I want. And he's obviously, he maybe never will get there, but he's 6'8", he can shoot, he can dribble, he can run around.
Yeah, I feel like it's very important to draft very athletic players in today's game. So I feel like that's why I want Azor Thompson the most. I feel like he's one of the most athletic people they can get at that point at 9. And like Jesse said, either the Jazz will focus on position, but most of the teams in today's game just focus on whatever's the best left to get in that draft. All right. Time to move on to Spice. Jesse and I this week have seen in a movie that is incredible, and everyone needs to see it. If you haven't seen it yet, please see it. And if you haven't seen the first one, see it. And I'll tell you right now what that movie is. Spider-Verse. It's you just gotta go see it. I'm not gonna say much because I'm worried I'm going to spoil, but see the first Spider-Verse movie and pay attention to certain details, and the second movie will be really interesting to you. And it's just a great movie, and Miles Morales, the main character in the movies, is really fun and cool to watch, and really cool character, and the animation's incredible, and I'm sure that Spider-Verse has opened a universe for cinematic movies in the future for more films kind of similar with animation more for like, yeah, it's like a kid's movie, but I feel like they make the animation more for like everyone. It's not just a kid's movie.
Yeah, and so the listeners know, we asked Charlie a month ago, well, maybe, me and my wife, what his number one movie all time was, and he said the first Spider-Verse.
Oh, yeah.
So he's big on the Spider-Verse movie.
I love the Spider-Verse.
I thought, too, it was awesome. It was super well done. It was very creative, very unique. They take... I don't know. You have to watch it. It's the most unique animated movie I think I've ever seen, not only in terms of story, but also, like, in how they animate it. And if you see it, then you'll know what I mean, because I don't want to spoil it at all. But it's super... If you like the first one, super funny. It's got a good message. It's got a good heart. I recommend.
Exactly. Another thing that I want to talk about in Spice, it's not in our agenda, but it's happened recently. The Suns are waiving Chris Paul. So, to you guys, what teams do you think are like, ooh, like every team probably in the NBA is kind of like, oh, Chris Paul would be good for us. But what team specifically? There's two teams I can think of. I want to hear what Dad says because I think Jesse agrees with me. What two teams do you think are like, ooh, Chris Paul would move us a step closer to that chip? What do you think,
I don't know
Dad?
about two teams. I know the Lakers would be the one team.
Exactly. I said that too, and I called Jesse, and he mentioned another team. And what team is that, Jesse?
Well, there's a couple other teams I think that would be interested in his services, depending on what happens with James Harden. I think Philly could be a potential landing spot. And then I could also see the Clippers trying to make a run, but that would get a little spicy because that would mean that they kicked Russell Westbrook to the curb, and Russell Westbrook was pretty good for them. But I could see that maybe being a possibility. The one thing that for sure cannot happen is that he re-signs with the Suns for less money, because that feels like cheating the rules. So if he gets waived, he hopefully will go somewhere else.
That is totally Slick Willie.
I really hope he doesn't do that, what you just said, joins the Suns. I think they've talked about it multiple times. LeBron and Chris Paul have wanted to play together. I feel like it definitely could happen. But
they could get, Charlie, a point guard that would play. Jesse and I talked about this. A point guard that would play.
Schroeder.
And play him most of the year. And play Chris Paul in the playoffs, so he's not like tired, he's not beat up. Wow.
Yeah, I would have Dennis Schroeder and have him be your starting point guard the regular season, have him play the majority of the minutes. Obviously play Chris Paul, so he's not rusty or whatever. But then once it comes to playoff time, maybe you start both of them, maybe you start Paul, maybe he still comes off the bench and plays, a big role, but Chris Paul would have helped a healthy Chris Paul would have helped the Lakers this playoffs.
I feel like one player, though, that could maybe get the Lakers to think besides Chris Paul is Irving. And his little things he's doing with LeBron coming to the Mavs, and what does that mean? Or is it just LeBron be like, hey, you got to make a move because I need more players, I feel like they're kind of scheming something a little bit there. That is one thing to look at. But I think if I'm the Lakers, just try to get Chris Paul.
Yeah.
I agree. Kyrie Irving, he is just kind of Kyrie Irving equals chaos. And I just don't know. I just don't know about Kyrie Irving. He's so good, but he is chaos.
Yeah, a couple things. I think there's about a 0% chance of LeBron going to Dallas.
100%.
I don't think he wants... He doesn't... And I know Kevin Durant just did this, but I don't think he wants to demand a trade on his resume. Each time he switched teams, it's been as a free agent, and I feel like he doesn't kind of want that connotation associated with him that he demanded a trade. Kyrie Irving is currently way better than Chris Paul.
Irving's a free agent this year, right?
Yeah. Well, he has a player option. I think that he could say no to it and be a free agent.
Kyrie Irving's way better right
than Chris
now.
Paul. But the thing is you're talking about potentially getting Chris Paul on a minimum, right?
Yeah.
A veteran's minimum where Kyrie Irving's going to want a lot of money.
Exactly.
Like $40 million.
To get Kyrie Irving, they would have to forfeit the depth that they just traded for.
If you get Chris Paul, you're able to get
keep the depth.
more players. I 100% agree.
Yeah.
All right. So, in my episodes, I have this website where I find something weird, and I found something weird that we're going to talk about real quick. So, a man invents bulletproof wheat in the year of 1984. Bulletproof armor has been around for ages, but in 1984, a man named Larry Rogers invented bulletproof wheat. Apparently, the material he made could also be turned into bulletproof pasta. The material distributes and absorbs the impact, the inventor told the Spokane Chronicle at that time. He also claimed that because it would allow farmers to use more of their crop, it had the potential to change the state of the world. How are you guys feeling about bulletproof wheat?
Can you imagine you're like a cop in Detroit in your first day and someone's like, all right, son, just strap this pasta to your chest. You're fine. I'm not sure I'd be down with that. Also, can you eat the pasta?
It's bulletproof. It's not like you could eat bulletproof glass. I don't know how
that might hurt coming out. I don't.
You might mess up some of your you might mess up some of your teeth on that one.
So, wheat, I'm just saying it, wheat is bulletproof. When I was a kid, my parents, mom and dad got this wheat churner thing that would make bread. And so they then got these green bins of wheat. And we had all this wheat. And no one really liked the bread. As kids, it was just so thick and dense. It was like... it was like grain nuts or whatever. Though, you know what I'm talking about? The cereal. You take a bite and it feels like, oh my gosh, I'm so full. And that was like this wheat bread, and so we never ate it much. And then it would bring in mice. So
the wheat would?
because the mice would want to eat the wheat. So yeah, that happened too. On wheat.
I'm not bringing any wheat to my house if there's mice.
Yeah,
no
I'm out.
Way. I'm out on the bulletproof vest just because of that.
Yeah, I'm out.
Poor Larry Rogers. He said, what did he say? It had the potential to change the state of the world in 1984. Considering none of us have ever heard of it, I don't think his vision was realized 40 years ago.
Yeah, definitely not realized. All right, real quick, both of you, what's the spiciest thing that's happened to you this recently or this week?
I'll go. So, and Jesse was actually kind of part of this, but we all went to St. George over the holiday. And so when we got home, there was a 2-gallon thing of milk in our fridge, and the expiration day was July 30. Let's see, no, we're in June, so May 31st, but it had not even been opened. So I opened it. I was like, man, I want some milk so bad. It was so cold, and it tasted okay. And then June 1st, it tasted okay. And I can't remember if Jesse came over on June 1st or June 2nd. But did you try the milk, Jess?
Yeah.
And
did not taste good.
It was borderline. I mean,
I thought it still tasted good on June 2nd. I think on June 3rd, I started to wig out a little bit. And I poured the rest down the sink. But pretty spicy. I usually, if it's close on milk, I'm out. But this was brand new. It had not even been opened. I gave it a chance. And I think I'm pretty happy about it.
Well,
pretty
good.
spicy in a good way.
Looks like you didn't get sick. That's what's important.
Right?
What about you, Jess, man?
Yeah, so maybe my spicy thing is for a thing that's happening tomorrow. But I don't know if I told either of you this because it's a little embarrassing, but it's the only thing I can think of, so I'm about ready to admit it on your podcast. But a while back, I was running on my treadmill that you can kind of see behind me, and I pulled a muscle in my right butt cheek. So I've been fine. Like, it was pretty sore for a long time, and I couldn't move very well. But I'm fine now when I walk, but I still can't run.
Oh no!
So I'm going to a physical therapist tomorrow. So hopefully he can fix my butt cheek so I can run again.
Hopefully he rolls that out for you or something.
I don't really know. I've never been to a physical therapist. I don't know if he's gonna show me stretches or exercises.
Yeah,
I don't
I'm
think
sure
he's
he
gonna
will.
stop me down, but I don't really know.
Good luck on that.
Maybe a little of both. Spicy thing that happened to me actually was kind of today. I work at a place where we deliver doors, and there's this guy named Russ, and he knows I love basketball. And out of the blue, he just gave me 2 basketball cards, and one of them was my dad's favorite player, Danny Ainge. So I gave him that card as an early kind of Father's Day present.
Oh, yeah, Danny Ing.
Where is the card?
Hey, Josh.
Show the camera the card.
And the other guy's named Tom Chambers. I didn't really know him that well, but
Tom Chambers?
no,
Oh, you got.
you're not really
Can you
sure.
guys see that?
Yeah, well,
He's
yeah,
in a
there
Blazers
he is.
uniform.
There he is.
There's the Danny Ainge in all his beauty. What are you doing right now, Dad?
Danny Ainge is sexy.
All right, what's going on with your camera?
Yeah,
All right, but thank you, Dad and Jesse, for joining me tonight. I had a lot of fun talking with you guys, and I'm excited to do this every week. Next week, for listeners, we will go over a mock draft all the way to around 16. That's the second Jazz pick. And we'll probably focus a little more things about the draft, and maybe finals will be over, maybe it will not be over. Who knows? But yeah, do you have something you said, Jesse? Sorry.
Yeah, sorry. I know you're trying to wrap up. One thing, real quick, and maybe we can talk about this next week. But the NBA should change its rules where free agency happens before the draft.
Yes. We will talk about that next week because I agree, and we'll have certain points we can say. But thank you for listening. Hopefully it was fun to watch our faces. It's kind of hard not to touch your face. I realized I was doing it a couple of times. I touched my nose, and I was like, oh, I can't be doing that. But I...
Shout out to
At least we, not as far as I can tell, none of us picked our nose.
No, that is true. And then I think Jesse was going to say shout out to...
Yeah, I was just going to say shout out to our 4th podcast guest, Kylo Ren, in the background.
Yeah, I don't know if you guys can see him, but that's my friend Kylo Ren.
And a shout out to Ruby, Ruby,
Happy birthday,
my
Ruby.
granddaughter. Ruby's birthday today.
All
Ruby
right.
is an amazing niece and an amazing granddaughter.
And super smart. She
We
is
love you,
way
Ruby.
smart.
All right, everyone. Thank you for listening. And
Go
have
Jazz.
a spicy week. Go Jazz. And love you all. Peace.